Okay, hi YouTube. It is 37 days until SRS. Um, really just a little bit more than 5 weeks away here. 5 weeks from Wednesday. Pretty exciting, I guess. A lot of people ask if I'm getting nervous or whatever. The answer is no, not really. I think I'm sort of not looking forward to the recovery, or anything like that, but in terms of making those travel plans, that's pretty well done. I think I'm a little bit concerned that there might still be a little bit too much hair left down there. I don't know how much of that is me being a worrywart versus kind of how much of it needs to be cleared for sure. So I'm not sure if I need to send them a picture of my junk or, or what to see if they say, oh yeah, go get a second clearing, or no, we can take care of that. Sort of an awkward conversation to have, but I think one that is definitely worth having. And so, really, I think outside of surgery, what I want to talk about is another awkward conversation I had a couple of weeks ago where I met a couple of guys out at a bar with some friends, and one of them was able to clock me. And it wasn't necessarily that he clocked me because of any sort of one particular trait. What he said was essentially that there was something about my body language that seemed a little bit off. And he couldn't quite put his finger on it, but as soon as he realized that there was something different or off, he started trying to figure out what it was. And then, it's a whole bunch of things. Like, I was very open about some things that I guess maybe women typically aren't. I was dressed a little bit more casually, sort of looser attire than a lot of the other women in the bar. It's two black guys, and I'm the only white girl. The only person really willing to talk to them, which also probably set them off a little bit in the fact that, them being black, they're probably a little bit more perceptive than your average white person in general, because they kind of have to be sort of more socially aware, I think, than probably your typical, privileged white male. So all of those things combined with the fact that when they came back to my apartment, I had to take my evening meds, and then one of them starts reading books off the bookshelf, finds Julia Serrano's Whipping Girl, and says, whoa, what's this all about? And that's when it kind of clicks for the other guy that, oh wait, maybe this girl is trans, and that's why all of these things seem just a little bit off. Or whatever. And so it was, I went out with the one guy on that second date. The smarter of the two was able to put it together, and he sort of pulled it out of me. And what I came to realize afterwards was that really what was kind of causing this is this projection of a lack of confidence. And so, like, I'm very observant, and sort of everything I know about the female presentation is stuff that I've picked up through observation. So the fact that there are sirens in the background is not going to distract me from the overall story here, which is that, while I feel pretty good about my presentation, I think what is always kind of under the surface is that sort of thought or fear or, question of, well, what are they going to do once they find out? Which I think that's an important way to frame it, because once they find out is sort of the inevitable, whereas if they find out is a little bit different. And so I actually spoke about this with my therapist over this past weekend, and sort of came back to this idea that I've had before, where it is really that I assume that, or I should assume, that everybody already knows that I'm trans. And this way, it doesn't matter, because I assume that they know, so how I behave around them shouldn't change. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm going to run around and broadcast my trans status, but it does mean that if somebody finds out, it shouldn't faze me one way or the other, because I think what I was internalizing is the potential for a negative reaction, and I get negative reactions a lot. particularly in the dating world. And so this idea that once they find out I'm no longer dateable, I think is something that I project out, or it's sort of a lack of confidence because I assume that once they know they're not going to want to sleep with me, they're not going to want to date me, whatever, which is why kind of in the sort of the last couple of weeks here why I haven't made a video, I've been trying to kind of pull my shit back together. And part of that involved kind of doing a couple of drunk girl things where, I 2 weekends in a row, I just picked up a random guy at the bar and brought him back after disclosing, and, sure enough, these guys didn't care. For one of them it was, well, that's, I'm not going to touch it or do anything with that, but we can still fool around. And I was okay with that. And then the other guy was more, I guess, open-minded and said, well, I've never done anything like that before, but, you're hot, you're cool, why not? Let's give it a shot. And, he spent the night and whatever. So, it's, that's not true that people are not going to want to date me because they are. Or hook up with me even. Although I guess those are two different things because I think a lot of guys are willing to hook up with a trans woman, but they're not necessarily willing to date one, but that's another story. But I think the idea is there that people, even if they know, are still willing to date me. And if there are people who aren't, I shouldn't be changing who I am or how I act with the world because I'm afraid that somebody might not want to date me, because if they don't, then they don't. And there's no real need for me to be spending sort of any energy on being concerned whether or not they know. And so then I think the last issue is that once I become post-op, that need to disclose obviously becomes a lot smaller. And so then the concern becomes, well, if you disclose to somebody too late into a relationship. And I think that is something where you kind of have to figure out what works based off of context. But, that's sort of another bridge that I will cross when I get to it.